This is going to be a video on converting a stair step bind off to a short row bind off. Oftentimes you'll find stair step bind offs in the directions for a shoulder shaping. So this is an example of how you could change a stair step bind off to a short row bind off. Short row bind offs are much easier to seam because you just match stitch to stitch and you don't have to worry about working around the stair steps on the stair step bind off. So first we're just going to work a little stair step bind off, so refresh your memory on what that looks like. We've got 15 stitches here and we're going to make 3 bind off rows of 5 stitches each, so there'll be 3 stair steps. So the first thing we do is we knit to the end of the row. There may be some pauses in here where I'm not talking and I'm just knitting. There's really not that much to say about this. So we'll knit to the end of the row and then we'll turn and we'll bind off the first 5 stitches. That'll be the first stair step. Okay, so we'll turn the work and we're going to bind off the first 5 stitches. So we knit the first stitch. Actually, we're purling them because we're binding off in pattern. We push the first one over the second. That was 1 bind off. This is 2 bind offs. 3, 4, and you just want to bind off with medium tension, not too tight and not too loose. Now notice after we make the 5th bind off that we have a stitch on the right needle already. That's the first stitch of this row. You count it as stitch 1, that's 2, and we're going to work back to the end of the row. So we've created our first stair step bind off. So we only have 10 stitches left. We did 5, so there should be 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now we're going to work to the end of this row. Work over the 10 stitches. And we're doing this in stockinette. You can do this in garter stitch as well. You could probably do it in seed stitch too, or many other different stitch patterns. We turn the work. I've got a second swatch on this needle to do the short row. So we're going to bind off the first 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now notice that I did not slip the first stitch for binding off. You may see people do that. It makes it difficult seaming edge when you slip that first stitch. It's much easier to just knit the stitch, then you can see what you're working with. Now we have 5 stitches left. Now notice between the first bind off edge and the second one there's actually 2 rows of knitting. That's the stair step. If you were working this in garter stitch, there would be 1 garter stitch ridge. 2 rows equal a ridge. So now for the last bind off edge, we actually knit all the way to the end of the row again so that our stair step is the same height as the other ones. Don't just bind the remaining 5 stitches off. Turn the work. And we're going to bind off these 5 stitches. As you work across binding off, be careful not to pull too much yarn into the next stitch. Just use your regular tension. You don't want them too big or too little. And the last bind off. And we'll take a look at this. So we've got our 3 stair steps. 2 rows between each one. That's what a stair step bind off looks like. Now, in order to convert this to short rows, on the first row what we're going to do is we're just going to knit over until there are 5 stitches left. We aren't going to knit all the way to the end of the row and then bind off back. We're just going to knit over till there's 5 stitches left. We're going to do a wrap and turn and work back this way, and then we'll knit till there's 10 stitches remaining, wrap and turn and knit back this way. Then we're going to knit across the row picking up the wraps. In garter stitch you would not need to pick up the wraps, but on stockinette stitch you would need to pick up the wraps so they don't show, and then you bind off. So we're going to do that on this swatch. Okay, we have 15 stitches here, and we're going to work over the first 10. So if there's 5 remaining, okay, we've got 10 on this needle, 5 on this needle. Then we're going to wrap this stitch just to secure the end of the short row, turn the work, and we'll work back to the end of the row. Okay, that's our first short row. There's the wrap. That consists of 2 rows longer. This section is now 2 rows longer than this section. Now we're going to work across 5 stitches so that there are 10 remaining, and we'll make another wrap and turn. And we're going to wrap and turn. And we'll work back. Now we're going to knit across the row, picking up those 2 wraps. We've got one here and one here. Now our work slants. See how it's slanting? Instead of a stair step, knitting fabric really gives a lot. So you're not, even those 2 rows between here and here, and 2 rows between here and here, 4 rows between here and here, it still slopes smoothly. It doesn't make that stair step. So now we're going to work across and pick up those wraps. Here's one wrap right there. I'm going to put the needle under it, go through the stitch, pull the yarn through both. That conceals the wrap, pushes it to the back of the work. Then we're going to work to the next wrap. Here's the next one. Do the same thing. Work to the end of the row. And then we're going to bind off, and then we'll compare the 2. And we'll talk a little bit about seaming. So we're binding off in pattern, which means we're binding off purlwise. You can bind off knitwise or purlwise. You can even bind off in knits and purls, like if you're binding off ribbing. Or seed stitch. That requires binding off in knits and purls. I have a little video that you can look at on seaming stair step bind off, so you can look at that next if you want to, just to see what that involves. We'll talk a little bit about seaming the short row bind off. This is called short row shoulder shaping, actually, because that's what it's most commonly used for. Almost done. Okay, let's compare these 2 swatches. this swatch. See that nice diagonal line there? You can't see the short row wraps compared to this swatch that has the stair steps. So when you're seaming a stair step swatch, you're going to seam into the stitches on this side. You do not seam the actual distance here in the stair step. If you did, that adds extra stitches to your seam and will splay the seam. It will not look good. You only pick up one stitch for each stitch in the seaming. You work through one stitch for each stitch. So you can see how that could be a little bit confusing because of those stair steps. In a short row bind off, short row shoulder shaping, that's a tongue twister, you pick up one stitch, you work through one stitch in each stitch to work the seam, and you can see very clearly how those stitches are very easy to see, and you would not make the mistake of picking up extra stitches. Hope this helps you.